All right, y'all. So here's why I don't feel bad that we lost the war against Iran. Because I know that it wasn't worth winning, and because I know that we didn't give it our hardest try to win. And we didn't try our hardest to win because we had nothing to gain. That's obviously what happened. Whereas Iran was fighting for their existence, the IRGC and whatever leaders they have there, as bad as those guys are, they were fighting for their existence there, for their ability to continue on and whatnot. We, on the other hand, were fighting for another country. And it soon dawned on our president that it was not worth continuing to go on. Now, he thought that he was going to get all this glory. He thought that he was going to dive into Venezuela 2.0, come in there and bomb stuff. There's going to be uprising. The people are going to overturn their regime. There's going to be jubilee everywhere, and he'll be hailed as the greatest president ever to change the whole structure and dynamic in the Middle East. But I guess, unfortunately for him and the people in Iran, that's not what happened. It wasn't that easy. In fact, what happened was that what the pundits here in the US who had warned that this would be a big deal, that this would not be easy, were proven right. You know who else was proven right? Decades of intelligence assessments that said Iran's not going to be easy. You can't go in there and just overturn the regime and whatnot. It's a big country. It's a big, complicated country. And it turns out that they're a lot more clever than perhaps Trump was told, although it sounds like he did understand, or at least there were people within the U.S. intelligence apparatus, people even within his administration who said it was not going to be easy. But anyway, he was fooled into there. He was, as one colleague of mine said, hornswoggled by the charismatic and sociopathic Bibi Netanyahu, who, by all reports, indicates, used his charm to fool him into thinking that it was going to be easy. That's essentially what happened. Now, Trump, you got to give him credit. I am going to give him credit. Instead of digging in, instead of doubling down, he somewhat swallowed his pride and he backed out. Now, of course, he did what Trump did, which is basically frame it as a win and that everything is different now and it's much better and the whole world wins. It's not that much different. It's just not. The IRGC is still in charge. The entire apparatus that was there before is still in charge. Who's dead? Well, an 80-year-old guy who apparently was on his way to dying, and I guess a bunch of their leaders, I don't know, 20, 30, whatnot, but that hasn't changed the political apparatus there. It's not going to change the way that people are treated there. And the only thing that I think that is going to change is now the world has more respect for Iran because apparently they're like masters of asymmetrical warfare here. I mean, they had this one card, that being that Strait of Hormuz, and they had a bunch of missiles that they figured they can just keep launching. And they played those two cards very, very well. You have to give them credit. But all that to say is that if we saw Iran as a real threat, which we obviously don't. If Iran was really an imminent threat, which it obviously isn't, then we would have deployed everything to take them out. We would have sent boots on the ground. We would have gone into Karg Island. We would have taken out the IRGC. And I think given enough time, we may have been able to win. Now, again, some of that is maybe debatable because you could take Afghanistan, you could take, various, there are countries, and especially in the Middle East and the Levant, whatever you want to call it, that are very difficult to conquer. There are countries that have a history of just not being able to be won, and we couldn't win in Vietnam, but some would argue it was more or less kind of like here, because in Vietnam we said, you know what, we're out of here, this is not worth it. And that brings me to, I think, one of the most important points, and that being is, we go into these wars and there's not much writing on the line. In fact, we have more to lose by going there. Our existence is not in jeopardy when we go into these wars. Our way of life is not in jeopardy when we go into these wars. And that's why we don't go through with them, because we realize it's like, why are we here? What are we doing here? I want to go home. You know, I want to go live in my homeland in America where life is great, where if we leave these people alone and we go home, they're not going to come and bother us. I know that the neocon punditry and the foreign policy establishment and the media love to tell us that these people all the way on the other side of the planet, if we don't go there, these people are going to come here and they're going to ruin our way of life. But if you look at history, if you look at the way things have panned out, that's simply not true. Do you know how many Islamic tied attacks, Islamic extremist attacks there have been in the US before 1950? Zero. I looked it up. Do you know how many have been between 1950 and now? Like several, right? We know this. If we can't even, I don't know what the exact number is, but we know that they happen. Now, what is the difference? What happened between 1950 and now? Well, what happened is we decided to embark on imperialism. Now, of course, the voters didn't get a choice in this. I don't know anyone who ever decided or agreed, any normal person who agreed that it was great to put hundreds of installations all around the world and to start playing the police, the world's police and whatnot. But that's what our leaders did. As they tend to do, they developed a policy without asking the people. They went on with it. And so now we're starting to reap those consequences. We've been reaping those consequences for a long time. A lot of the debt you see is because of that. We've lost thousands and thousands of precious American lives. I would say that's actually a far bigger consequence than the debt that is probably going to destroy us as a country or collapse us, or it's going to change something dramatically. That seems to be where we're going there. So that's a big deal too. But I would say losing, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many of American lives is probably the largest consequence. But that's what happened. What happened is we became an empire without the consent of the people. Our foreign policy establishment and embarked on changing, on regime change everywhere, on forming the world according to this globalist blueprint that the elites, that the international oligarch class have in mind. And so the U.S. is the military muscle of that. They were going to form this, and that's still the plan. Now, I don't know where Trump fits in all of this. I don't think it was part of the plan to pull out before having a regime change in Iran. I just don't see that. And I'm almost positive that I'm right about that. Which brings me to another reason why it's good that this war ended without any more casualties, without, turning into a quagmire. And that is that it shows that the neocon class, this interventionist foreign policy establishment class, have been proven wrong again. Everything these people have ever done has been very detrimental to this country. It's not America first. Again, America faces no danger, and they know it. You know how they know it? Because we walk away from these. We leave because we realize that is the best option. We left Vietnam. We left Iran. There's been other instances where we just don't want to get involved after a while, or we get involved and we're like, no, this is not worth it. And that's what happened here. So I'm hoping that going forward, this will serve as a huge reminder, as another reminder, but one that is finally going to hit some sort of watershed moment where policy finally does change, where the interventionist crowd is finally drowned out and discredited for the nitwits and the destructive sociopaths that they are, because that's what they are. When you see people like Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin, who are seething, who always just want to bomb and kill everyone, and they talk about it so openly, these people are crazy. They're demonic. They're sociopaths. There's no other way to put it. I don't understand how We don't see that. I especially don't understand how Christians, my tribe, the evangelicals, the Protestants especially, don't see how crazy this is to think that it's a good thing for us to go all over the world and bomb the shit out of everyone as if and act like everyone is this massive, massive threat, and act like our going around the world and occupying all these lands and intervening in all their policies has no blowback whatsoever. Like, oh, they're crazy, they're extremists, they hurt our soldiers. Yeah, our soldiers where? Over there. They hurt them over there. How about we bring them here? Bring them here, and maybe let's try something new. How about we bring them here, bring everyone home, and see what the rate of that injury, all those terrorist attacks that we're always told about, see what that goes down to. Is it going to go down? Because it is. I guarantee you it's going to go down. I guarantee you that if we remove all American lives from overseas and bring them home, that there is going to be a massive decline in the number of Americans who are hurt by Islamic terrorists, by Iranian proxies, because that's what they're always telling us. They're always telling us, we've been at war for 47 years. These people are always attacking our people. Well, how about we get our people out of there? Because here's what would happen if Iran or Russia or China, they start putting soldiers in Canada and in Cuba and in Mexico. We would not like it, and we would certainly do something. Remember when the Russians tried to put missiles in Cuba? What happened there? We ended up in a nuclear standoff. Okay, so this is just craziness. This is all craziness. Everything that's happening here is crazy. The fact that we're letting this little bitty country, Israel, fool us into thinking that we need to go over there and destroy this country and effect the regime change because they're somehow crazier than everyone else, by the way. This is another thing. This is what drives me nuts. Okay. When I argue with people about this, they'll tell me, yeah, but Iran is different. It's not North Korea. It's not the Pakistanis. It's not the Russians, who, by the way, all have nuclear weapons, right? If you want to tell me that the North Koreans are that crazy, come on, man. The Iranians aren't any crazier. Remember last summer when we bombed their nuclear facilities? What did they do? Well, what they did is they launched a missile, is it Qatar or Bahrain or somewhere where we had a base. But before they did that, you know what they did? They called us and they said, hey, we're going to launch a missile. Get your people out of the way, right? That was like their way of facing, it's theater, right? It was their way of saving face, okay? They didn't fight back until we launched this official war and they got bombed everywhere. And then they fought back. And apparently pretty well, because they were able to use the very minimal leverage that they hold, but that has obviously proven very effective to their benefit. So all that to say, I'm gonna wrap this up. All that to say is that the neocon foreign establishment class is wrong. It was wrong again. And what is wrong is this crazy idea that we have to always be at war. This is not right. This is not right. And no one should be voicing resistance to this more than Christians. This is not how a Christian country behaves. It's just not. You can't honestly think that it is our duty to leave our hemisphere of the world where no one would bother us and exert and just start bombing everyone and affecting all these regime changes and making them do our bidding. Okay, it's just not right. It's not a Christian thing. And it's not a Christian thing to be an ally to another country that's not a Christian country, to a country that has a record of destroying Christian churches and Christian communities. They did that in Lebanon. They did that with churches in Gaza. There's other instances. It's like, I don't understand that either. I just don't understand it. So we need to be smarter going in the future. We need to use this as a lesson. And next time, and there will be a next time, there always is, next time the Lindsey Grahams of America and the sociopaths like Levin and the BBs come and try to snare us into another fight. We need to remember this, and we need to remember that a benevolent nation, one of the major tenets of just war is that it's self-defense. This was not self-defense. It was not even clear. It was not even close. We all know that. All right. So if you listen this far and you like it, please go ahead and subscribe, share with others, do all that cool stuff to help me. Thanks.